Well, good. Okay. Hey, good morning from Sydney, Australia. This is a bit of, well, this isn't a bit. This is a re-recording of a talk that I gave back in only last week at the Go programming language meetup. Okay, so what's it called? How this one weird trick editor made a Go live stream viral. Now, this is obviously a piss take, right? These clickbait things and these kind of like attention-grabbing words were really starting to get to me. So this is a story of kind of how the last 4 weeks have gone as I randomly decided to live stream despite never having watched anything like that before. And yeah, kind of how it happened and all that. Yeah. So over the past few weeks, I've, sort of started applying for jobs and looking around and, that involves, of course, reading a lot of job descriptions. And man, I was having a really hard time reading these job descriptions. The reason why is because they reminded me of these ads back in the sort of, 2000s and 90s, I guess. Even though you think as a tech person, oh no, I'm like immune to all this kind of, clickbait stuff and all that. The reality is that it's actually pretty easy to spot, and it's not uncommon at all to see these things. For example, like the unusual link between Alzheimer's and object-oriented programming. Again, like what? Like what has this got to do with anything? But you'll actually see things that are kind of like this, in these job descriptions. Millions of people are canceling their cable because of exciting greenfield microservices environments. Are those things like good things? Are they bad things? Are they meant to be put together? Why is there a beautiful woman there? Again, like you kind of read these job descriptions and you'll see these things like these terms next to each other that are meant to kind of stand out. But when you sort of take a step back and go, wait, so does that mean it's hard to decipher meaning from? And this sort of thing was like really, really getting to me. So I stopped and I took a few days break. And there were three things that led to me to try something new. I want to do this in a kind of bad web ad format just because, I don't know, I thought it was funny or something. I kind of regret it now. But anyway, the first thing that happened, there are a few people, as usual in the Sydney meetup anyway, talking about like synthesizers. There seem to be a lot of people interested in synthesizers. I never knew it was such a popular hobby amongst programmers. Anyway, so there were people talking about that and people doing performances. And I thought, oh man, like you do performances, but like what happens if you suck? And they're like, yeah, of course we suck. Yeah, sweet, nice, okay. What a cool perspective, I thought. The second thing that happened was that I saw sort of lead of the Zig programming language project, Andrew R. Kelly. I saw him do a live stream. I thought, wow, this guy's like obviously a super genius. And I sort of tuned in and I just saw him sitting there. He was just kind of going, And then he'd type something and then he'd go, just sit there looking at his computer. And I thought, holy shit, like that looks just like me. And finally, the third thing was that, of course, writing resumes, I just couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was sort of like doing something wrong by doing the ritual, writing these things down, tailoring the resume to this particular person. Maybe it'll sort of stand out, maybe not. Couldn't do it. So I opened a Twitch account and I think I went online in like the next 15 minutes or something. I couldn't believe how quick it was to get started. But here's the second day.
All right. Hey, nobody. So we're back again, working on some lower level video streaming protocol stuff in Go.
Weird thing happened. There are about 2 or 3 people watching, and I couldn't believe it at first. I thought, oh wow, like this is amazing. Like I don't know where they are in the world. I don't know who they are. I kind of wondered why people were watching, and I think there were 2 reasons. What I started streaming about, by the way, Go in broadcast and sort of streaming TV station environments. I was working on a Go package to handle parsing, decoding, SCTE35 messages. SCTE35 messages, or SCTE35 messages, are used to signal breaks in live streams. It's a standard, like a messaging standard that was first written down, or at least published as a standard back in 2001. So it was never really designed for IP environments. It's one of these, like, bit packed things. So you're kind of saving bits around the place to, there's a bunch of error checking built into it. There's tricky things that I hadn't really done before. And this is certainly not like web development, where there's a whole bunch of layers underneath that kind of take care of a lot of things for you. This is different. This is meant to be stuff that's like, received by set-top boxes, transmitted over satellite. I think the reason why this is interesting is because, as I said, it's not web development. This is really more dealing with technology rather than software. If anybody's been in a TV station or the similar sort of environment, there's a whole bunch of like really scary stuff in there. It's like all duct taped together kind of software that's been running since 99, and like, yeah, it still works. And we've got like 4 redundant sort of, pieces of hardware. If one falls and the other one goes, and we're still okay. The software's terrible, right? But they said to me, we're a technology company, not a software company. And to translate that, I care about bits, bytes, bandwidth, and buffering. Don't talk to me about JavaScript dependencies being out of date. As long as Chrome loads a JavaScript okay, move on. And at that point, I remember going, oh shit, okay, well, the JavaScript is running on the server, but, yeah, like, okay, like, no worries, it sounds good, I didn't know that JavaScript ever was running on the server, The relevance of doing SCTE35 in Go, and I think why people found it interesting, speaks to one of the sort of, speaks to some of the values that make Go, really work in these kinds of environments. They're not these kind of live, software as a service, move fast, break things environment. It's a different kind of thing. Once something works, it's pretty much left there. My favorite story is me and my friend were both working at the same company, and we developed pretty much exactly the same software. He did one in JavaScript and I did one in Go. Now, I'm simplifying the story here just to kind of make it easier. And of course, we worked together on both of them. And he helped me a lot, actually, by the way. He was the one who got me into programming in the first place. So thanks, mate. You know who you are. This is really the basic gist of the software. So what it was doing was it was reading from a very, very, very bad HTTP service that you'd get over, you'd use this like long GET requests, which is a sort of method of receiving data as a stream, kind of, before, HTTP server sent events and before WebSockets were a thing. You basically just open a connection and then the thing will just keep sending you data. And then as long as you keep that TCP socket open, it'll keep sending things. If it closes for whatever reason, you just open it and you just wait for it again. The thing was that this service really sucked. So like the HTTP requests, of course, would like sometimes work. Sometimes you get random like HTTP, like server errors, like 500s and all this sort of thing. So it wasn't only the HTTP, it was like the TCP as well. The networking would go down, DNS would fail, all sorts of things. So the thing is that because of with Go and you got the channels and stuff, it just worked really well. So it was able to build upon what was in Go. And in the end, the consumer of this particular stream, they didn't know or care about anything. They just knew they were getting events, receiving, they were receiving events over a channel. Once that bit was sort of worked out, the rest of the application has just stayed the same. And my favorite stories is that when I left Australia and lived in the Netherlands for a couple of years, and I came back and it was still running. I'm pretty sure the VM had never been rebooted. It was just running on a VM. I don't know whether even the software was restarted. It didn't have a single patch to it. So it was just sitting there, exactly the same commit as when I left. Meanwhile, the system that my friend wrote, Different kind of system. Same system, but different. Okay. The HTTP request library was deprecated. And I don't mean deprecated, so what I really mean is it was abandoned. So you had to migrate to a new one. And at first I thought, what? Like, I'd never done any JavaScript before. So I thought, well, why is there an HTTP client library? Like, isn't that, surely it's in a standard library or something? I don't know. Like, isn't there all sorts of stuff in there? So you go out and you got to like go and find one. And then all of these libraries have like logos and like branding pages. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, so in the end, I chose Axios. The logo seemed okay. I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure. Because of a lot of this uncertainty and because I was so new to JavaScript, I really needed tests. I didn't quite understand how the system really worked. In Go, you got the built-in test thing. That works. Okay. But in JavaScript, it's not different, right? You need to, again, choose your testing framework. So there's one called Jest, which is from Meta. And then you've got another really cool small one that I kind of like because, you know, these dependencies were proving to be a problem. But again, I thought, wait, like, doesn't the new version of Node.js have one built in? Oh, but wasn't it experimental? Oh, wait, but maybe it was the HTTP library that was experimental. So maybe this one was kind of like alpha or beta or wait, what? I don't know. Anyway, so you kind of get to this point where you just don't know and you're like, shit, like I just need this new version. It's just going to make life so much better. But I couldn't because it was just running, you know, we've got some old VM running an old Debian. We can't, like, what version of Node.js comes in Debian at the time? I don't know. It was something old. Maybe we can use Docker. Oh, but then maybe we need to use Kubernetes. You know, the complexity builds. The sort of operational bits needed to get just a particular thing, you know, kind of blew out. So I went to my, a few of the managers, I went to my managers and I said to them, look, like, I'm going to really need some help here. Like, I'm way out of my depth. I'm a really shitty programmer. I don't know enough about this sort of thing. Yeah, this JavaScript stuff is just like, you know, sending me crazy. It seems so much easier in the other thing for this particular environment. And they said this to me: we're a technology company, not a software company. And I think this is kind of one of these sort of weird things. Now, for better or for worse, Go worked really well in this particular environment. Yeah, so that's why I think seeing Go in this context and hearing those stories, I think that's why people started to watch the stream. Now, as you know, kind of a week or 2 weeks went by, people started to send, you know, when you're doing these streams, obviously most people know this, but forever who doesn't, is when you're doing these live streams, you've got sort of yourself, you've got the screen and which has all the code and stuff on it. And then on the side, you've got, you know, your chat. So people are, you know, writing to you and you're speaking back to them as you do your thing. At some point, there were like a bunch more people joining, and I thought, oh, this is weird. Like, what's happening here? Why can't I paste URLs? Oh, I found you finally. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I don't know. Weren't you here in the beginning? I don't know. Like, is anybody watching this? I don't know. Oh, and then this one got me. Lol, no way, it's the guy from the meme. I thought, meme? Like, no, I'm not into memes. Like, I'm not into any of this. I just, you know, like, I'm not into any kind of like, I'm just here just to write code because, you know, I want to do software engineering because I haven't had an opportunity to do it. These job descriptions, the resumes, it just drive me crazy. I just need to do some engineering, just do some development, work stuff out, work on problems, solve problems. That's it. I don't want to know about anything else, okay? And then somebody sent this, dude, you're blowing up on Twitter and YouTube right now. And I thought, didn't we all leave Twitter? Like, I thought we were all on Mastodon or like Blue Sky, and YouTube. Well, I only started streaming to there like the day before or something like that. So I'm not sure what was going on. Well, you'd think the initial feeling is something like, oh, wow, great. You know, like I'm getting really popular. That's great. But actually it kind of reminded me, and I kind of got this weird sort of feeling of dread, I guess, which is weird. When you're writing these resumes, you know, you're kind of writing these things, people tell you to put that in, but in the end you think, like, this stuff doesn't really matter. Like, the hard part wasn't like learning this particular, you know, like cloud, you know, HTTP API. It wasn't, you know, about the fact that I knew this particular tooling or that I'd worked, I'd done projects in that programming language before. The hard bit wasn't the programming. The technology is not the tooling. So I'm kind of writing this stuff in this thing, but then that all around you, there's all these people and not all these people, there's pressure to do all this other stuff, and you're kind of surrounded by it. And these web pages, you had all this shit everywhere, and it was just crazy. And I think it is a little bit crazy out there. So in the end, I found the tweets, and they weren't what I expected. Okay, I'm convinced that devs who use Acme are just a different species. Huh. Acme, huh? So Acme is a text editor that was originally developed for the Plan 9 operating system. For some reason, this was very interesting to people. I thought a text editor is a text editor is a text editor, right? It's just text. What's the big deal? 200,000 hits. What? What is this? Okay. And then that kind of died off. But then 2 days later, writes infracritical low level in Go. Doesn't use syntax highlighting. Uses a 25-year-old code editor, wears sunglasses while he codes, sometimes works 9 hours straight, no BS. Definition of cracked. It's what? I don't actually know what cracked means. So I'm still doing the same thing. Most days going on and just speaking with really cool people, and they're helping me, and I hope that I'm helping them in some way. The difference is that more people watch now. Why is that? We've already been over what I think is the first and the important reason. It's that seeing Go in this sort of what we'd call an unusual environment. And a lot of people who are in the chat, they'll often say, oh, wow, this is so hardcore. I'm just doing Python or I'm just doing SQL in my, at work. And I think, well, yeah, I'd actually, I wouldn't mind doing that either, but it's just a different world, and I can't really get into that now. So I think it's just unusual, which is weird to me. Again, for me, it's normal. I don't know. I barely know how to use, relational databases. So yeah, just. What's the second reason though? And I think there is a second reason, and this is the kind of the piss take, is that every single time I stream, there's always the most common question by a long way is something like, what is that IDE? You'll get all sorts of questions like that. Why do you use that editor? I clicked because it wasn't in dark mode. It's I never use dark mode. I don't know. There is no dark mode in Acme, right? It's all just hard coded. That's a really funny one. Too many tech bros with new editors where it's all just emojis streaming all the time. I just found that so funny. So I think, of course, the second, really shit reason that people are watching, of course, is because it's unusual to see a yellow background editor. So what is Acme? Acme is a user interface for programmers, according to the author. I think that sums it up pretty well. I think programmers deal a lot with text, and in Acme, everything is text. The lead of the Go project, Russ Cox, made a video, a tour of the Acme editor. I really recommend looking at that because it's a really nice walkthrough of starting from the kind of basic sort of characteristics of the software, and then goes into a kind of full-on development session and kind of really highlights and sort of shows off what is going on in Acme. Writing programs to be used from Acme is pretty easy. And one of the fun ways to do this, at least one of the fun ways for me, has been using Go's sort of a new-ish IOFS package in the standard library. So this is a file system package. So just to give a really quick example, we've just seen a text editor be served as a file system. We could also imagine something like Reddit or Hacker News or Usenet or even a mailing list also be represented as a file system. For example, let's say we have a group or a subreddit or a like a Usenet group has a name, and within a group you've got numbered posts. So you've got post 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in that directory, you've also got things called comments, which are like, comments on the post. So that's pretty easy. Using that from Acme is also super easy because remember that Acme itself, who served as a file system. So using one bit of files, writing programs that read from one bit of the file system and write to another bit of the file system, well, we know that that's super easy. I think everybody's done that. You can even do that from the shell, right? Like you don't even need a full-blown programming language to do this sort of thing. So writing programs to be used from Acme is very, very easy. I wrote a little program that exposes Lemmy, which is sort of like a Fediverse, like Mastodon. I don't necessarily recommend using Lemmy, by the way. I think I wrote this just as an exercise. So we execute Lemmy and we're presented with the root of the file system, which is just a listing of all the directories which correspond to groups like subreddits in Reddit. And then you can type in anywhere, select one, load one up, and you're going to open up with all the posts. And then to open up a post, right, to read the directory, just the same as anything else on the file system, you just right click or load the directory. And then that'll show you the post and also the comments on it. Pretty easy. There's also the issue command, which lets you access GitHub issues from within Acme. This one's written by Russ Cox. I've also written basically an identical program for GitLab. So you're presented with a list of issues and you can select one to load one up. That'll open up a new window, which is, as always, just a text buffer. This time we can actually write in a comment and for example, include a bit of code. Let's format that text. Let's indent it with the A+ command. And also, let's check issue number 9, which we can do just by clicking it, just like normal. We can also then write the file by executing put. And because everything is text, we can load, select, or even execute stuff. Let's write the command which, A+, which writes the output into a new window. And let's load up A+, which is just, again, you're kind of getting the gist now, right-clicking it, loading it, and then that'll open the file. And what you can see is that our little command, our little program, our little plugin, is actually just a raw sed script. Just to prove everything's working, let's actually load the issue up in the browser and look at our comment. There it is, indented, formatted, all good. So of course, with all of these clickbait titles, the real thing never lives up to the actual title. But in this case, I think it's actually a good thing. How the weird editor made the live stream go viral isn't because it is actually so exceptional. Of course, it helps because, you've got this yellow background and it's not black and it's not sort of like, monospace font with syntax highlighting. So I was like, oh, that's unusual. But I think what it's really about is, of course, like sharing stuff. We've all, I think, learned a lot from open source stuff, from people sharing information freely, being able to just grab stuff easily without, paying a lot for, specs documents and stuff like that. So basically, this is just a way of saying thanks and to, spread the good word around the place. And at the very least, it's a nice little excuse for not needing to do any more damn resumes and reading job descriptions and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks everybody. And yeah, if you ever feel inspired, don't feel like you need to, do some kind of cool web dev thing. I never ever thought anybody would watch anything about SCSI35. And yet, people are asking questions and I learn a lot from it. And maybe they learned something too. Anyway, yeah, so good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. And I will see you next time. Yeah, thanks again.